all pain is repressed emotion and therefore is a trauma. A trauma is a stuck pain. It's stuck in there, and therefore it influences and alters our perceptions, our behaviors, thought processes, our feelings. So anything that's stuck in there is a trauma and distorts how we see the world. Small t traumas are this entire reality. We're chock-a-block filled with small t traumas. Anything. Right? Anything. I don't like eating avocados because I choked an avocado. Well, that's a stuck presumption. Nothing wrong with avocados. That's a small t trauma. Intergenerational trauma that influences how I feel about myself, relationship, the planet, right? All a small t trauma. Big t traumas are more of the, we can say, diagnosable, very perceptible. We can see them. Somebody who has experienced a car accident and is now wearing that trauma, and it's influenced how they walk through their life day to day. They flashbacks, fear of getting on the highway again. It's very disturbing. They really discern how this impacted their immediate life. As you can call it a big T trauma.
Welcome to a Broaderlands podcast. The opinions expressed on Broaderlands podcast are those of the guest speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of the host or Broaderlands podcast. Welcome to Broaderlands podcast. What an honor to have you on. I really appreciate it, you coming on.
I'm so looking forward to our conversation, Boo. Thanks for having me.
Maybe before we get started, you can share a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, as each day passes, I have no idea who I am, which just what we're going to discuss is shedding what we think we know about ourselves. So answering that question gets more and more difficult, truthfully. But I am a practicing registered psychotherapist in the province of Ontario in Canada. I also practice a lot of the alternative healing modalities like Ayurveda, yoga, meditation, and I work with and share either directly or indirectly my own growth process with my clients as part of their own healing process.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. If you don't mind, you can walk us into your upbringing and, did you have an awakening eventually to get to this point? Maybe share a little bit and expand on that if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I came from, I came from some pretty typical traumas. So I have a secular background, a Jewish father, Anglican mother, non-practicing either one of them. The word, for example, God never came up. And we were very intellectually critical of things like religion, even government. So we were really approach things with a critical eye. I experienced some, general abandonment, like some divorce at a young age, and parents coming in and out of my life. Those are significant, but so many of us have experienced some similar things. So I would say on the relative scale of trauma, it wasn't huge. And I pursued academia, degree after degree after degree after degree, which for me was the measure of success and the measure of respectability and acceptability. I didn't know it at the time, but that's what I was craving, was an acceptance. And so for me, it was getting more and more and higher degrees in academia. And then while working in a very sort of secular career, I was working in health promotion and community health. Back in 2006, suddenly everything just exploded, and I had no idea what was going on. I had experiences that were beyond my reference point because I had no community to share with me what this experience was. And it was beyond mind and it was beyond intellect. It went very much into emotion and intuition. And I felt like I was being pulled along in sort of this tidal wave of experiences that were so far outside that I couldn't even talk to anybody because I thought they would think I was a bloody lunatic. So I kept it to myself for years and years and years. Terrified as literally miracles were happening in front of me, sometimes on a daily basis for years. I was terrified. I remember somebody telling me it was like I was a wolf running through the steep snow in this exhausted fear, trying to get away from. He's like, "What? What are you running from?" Like, just sit still and allow what's happening. But it was tumultuous on a physical level, emotional level, mental level, because my mind couldn't really grasp it a long time, and then an energetic level, which I began to understand. The energetic body started to come in and what that meant and how that was part of an awakening process.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it. Dismantling the Third Dimension. I love your book. If anybody's watching this, it's a must read for anybody that's experiencing the human experience. I mean, it's just fascinating. I always say when the unconscious become conscious, enlightenment occurs. And it touches a lot on that. It really shines a light on our unconsciousness as a human being, because I think we all can understand each other because we're all having this experience. We're all human beings. So I really would love for you to touch on, a little bit about your book, if you don't mind.
So the book sort of sprouted gradually to begin with. I didn't know it was a book. It was just sort of notes I started collecting. And then coincidentally, it was around the time that COVID hit that there was this very frenetic energy that started to increase, like the rapidity with which I was writing, and needed to get ideas down, and the depth of the ideas and the breadth of the concepts that were coming through. And very painfully, because as I would release some pain, suddenly it would be like, oh my God, I get it. Holy, like I could finally understand something, and bigger pictures were coming in, and my whole reality was shifting. So it really sped up, and it was in COVID, when we were in lockdown, that it started to organize itself in this complete sharing of what I had gone through and what some of these understandings at a very visceral level were. And then boom, this book came out. I'm like, oh my God, I have a book. and then it was almost like it was, when I look back, I couldn't believe how fast it was, because of course I was working full time and then doing this book, and something I was like, it was a compulsion. This thing needed to get out, and it was almost like, I need to get this off of me, like this has to go somewhere. I'm meant to get this out. And then off it went.
I appreciate it. What does the third dimension mean to you?
I don't attached to it too firmly. It's a very gentle or understanding for this limited reality. So people talk dimension, people talk planes, but this limited, and what I refer to in the book, pain-filled reality, because those limitations are really constructed by the limitations of our pain. Our pain is very limited. And so this reality, I believe, is our understanding of it, our relationship to it, is very limited. And so I discuss the third dimension as being a pain reality, and all limitations that come from existing in a being that feels like it's in pain, emotional, physical, mental, energetic pain, almost all the time.
Yeah. So what does tribe to collective mean?
So our fear, and I think that we'll continue to discuss, dive into the meaning of that, but really our fear is built in the pain of separation. And feeling so desperately alone, what we try to do is resolve that fear of feeling alone and isolated and individual by, it's kind of led us to go, I got to collect my people around me and protect me, because everybody out there is out to threaten me and harm me. And so we create an us and them reality, thinking we're keeping ourselves safe. If I have my family, I have my community, I have my tribe, I have my village, if I have my religion, if I have my culture, if I have my company, then I'm safe. If I have my political party, then I'm safe. And so then everybody outside of that is the enemy, and we feel that we're safe from that enemy. And so we construct camps, and then out of that we construct the concept of difference. And so we believe that within those constructs that we're keeping ourselves safe, but actually what we do is we cement a reality of separation, that they are different than me, that they are other than me. And we keep ourselves in that pain. Now, what we do is we start to release our pain, which means I own my pain and I own my perceptions of separation and difference, that I am different and disconnected. If I own that, then I can shed that pain. And shedding that pain then opens up the reality, which is that we're actually connected. There is no separation. It's only the pain that's telling us that we are separate. So I shed my pain, and then I get to a higher truth, which is actually we're all deeply connected, and there is no difference.
I love that. Thank you.
Yeah.
One of my favorite topics is trauma, and sometimes I come from the 12-step communities, and it's a bad word to some people. Trauma, we don't talk about that stuff. The co-founders didn't talk about it, but I think it's the root of addiction. Trauma. I would love for you to talk. You mentioned the big T and the little T traumas. Maybe you can elaborate on that and help broaden our lens.
So I refer to all pain is repressed emotion, and therefore is a trauma. A trauma is a stuck pain. It's stuck in there, and therefore it influences and alters our perceptions, our behaviors, thought processes, our feelings. So anything that's stuck in there is a trauma and distorts how we see the world. Small T traumas are this entire reality. We're chock-a-block filled with small T traumas. Anything, right? Anything. I don't like eating avocados because I choked an avocado. Well, that's a stuck presumption. Nothing wrong with avocados. That's a small T trauma. Intergenerational trauma that influences how I feel about myself, relationship, the planet, right? All a small T trauma. Big T traumas are more of the, we can say, diagnosable, very perceptible. We can see them. Somebody who has experienced a car accident and is now wearing that trauma, and it's influenced how they walk through their life day to day. They flashbacks, fear of getting on the highway again. It's very disturbing. They really discern how this impacted their immediate life. As you can call it a big T trauma. We can give it a label. It's very easy to go, and I mean easy loosely. That's probably the easy thing to look at or to diagnose, and I'm not really big on the diagnoses, but we can see it. We can see the anxiety as a result of experiencing violence, for example. That's a big T trauma.
Yeah, appreciate that. I love talking about it because I think it's important to talk about. I know where I come from, my family doesn't talk about our traumas or our inner conflicts or emotions. And how does that affect us if we don't really talk about these things and have the proper communication and the coping mechanisms to deal with trauma?
Great question. And I think it's a big conversation, but essentially it keeps it repressed. So what we're trying to do is bring these traumas, these wounds that are buried in our bodies. We want to bring them into awareness, because when they're in awareness, then we can do something with them. We can work with them. We can change our relationship to them. In the end, we can actually transmute them, release them, transform them from our reality. But we can't do anything with them if we don't actually acknowledge they're there. And so we keep the trauma in its place. And we don't actually acknowledge that it exists. And that's what keeps us in this pain reality, which we've been doing for thousands and thousands of years, is denying our own pain. Mostly because a large part of the planet has considered our pain as a weakness and something we don't want to reveal to ourselves, to people outside the tribe, i.e. to people outside the family that don't want us to see as weak, that we're in pain. And so the trauma stories and the playing out of these trauma stories through the generations keep going and going, because we don't want to look at them. We don't want to see them. We don't want to discuss them. We want to bring them into the light.
I think I heard you say the root of all pain is repressed emotions. And that later turns us into like stuffing them down as a little kid, looking at my own experience. That worked perfect for a period of time. But
Correct.
Later it turned into alcoholism, addiction, and it created depression, disconnection. I love what Peter Levine says. Trauma is a disconnection of self.
Absolutely. 1000%. And sometimes we need to be disconnected from self because what's in self is too overwhelming and we don't have the tools to manage it. And we can see that on an individual basis. A child who's holding a lot of pain and does not have the tools yet to allow that pain to move. We can look at it as a greater social level, a global level, that we haven't had the tools to move thousands of years of intergenerational trauma. So it needs to stay put for a while until we get the energies and the collective momentum to start to move it through, which I believe is what we are now engaging in.
Yeah, thank you. One thing you touch on that I don't hear a lot of people touch on that are in the professional world is ancestral trauma, which is one. But we know about epigenetics, and I would love for you to touch on that. Generational trauma, past life trauma. Do you believe we can have past life trauma, and how does that affect us in our current life?
Yeah, I'm not I wouldn't consider myself an expert on past life trauma, ancestral trauma, intergenerational trauma. I'm not an expert, but I can speak to it more, is that we hold those traumas, like Richard Rev would say, right in our junk DNA. We have those programs, which we can call shadow selves. So that intergenerational and the ancestral wounds we carry forward in the very programming of our bodies. Past life trauma, I'm going to assume that that's a possibility, that we are carrying it through, but that also sort of works with the concept that, everything's happening all at once at the same time. So is there a past?
Yeah.
I don't know. Right. So I really want to humble myself and say, I don't know what's going on. I'm just going to limit myself to transmuting, to transforming whatever density comes before me into something lighter, into love. So if I learn that it's past life or many lives, or I don't know what, it doesn't really matter. In the end, I'm just transforming. I think there are a lot of people that might be able to speak to what past life really means, probably more than I do.
Maybe it's better to say other lifetimes.
Yeah, I think so. And they could be whose other lifetimes, and when are they I don't know. Like the relationship between time and space is so beyond where I can go at this time that I'm going to remain a humble listener and observer.
I love that. Thank you. Last summer I went to Egypt, right? And as soon as we landed, I heard a lady crying, African-American lady crying, and she says, "I'm home." And she started crying and she said, "I'm home, I'm home." And when I heard that, I felt like crying. I remember trying to change the subject in my mind because I don't want people to see me cry. But I felt her pain. I felt her ancestral trauma from being taken from Africa to the Americas. I just felt it very clear and strong in me. And I realized that we're all connected. And I already knew that, but it was just a great reminder. And I also knew that we're not fully healed until we all heal.
I would agree 1,000%. And to not understand that, I think, reflects the state of individualism and separation that we're still in. So I think we are all deeply connected, and we're all here sharing some journey at multiple ways, multiple levels. And the more that we release our pain, the more we can see that my healing is tied to your healing.
Thank you. You mentioned a lot. You talk a lot about in your book about the ego. Maybe you can touch on that. What does the ego mean to you?
Ego is the pain body. Ego, it's the construct of pain within our beings that can take on its own personality. And what the ego perceives as this reality is that there's a me, myself, there's an I have to take care of this, and I have to protect it from the threats of the outside world. Most of the other humans, and other humans have been very threatening for a long time. So the ego perceives itself as unique and individual and disconnected, not connected to the whole. And so it retains the pain experiences that we've had in this lifetime, past lives, ancestral lives. It keeps it sort of as information in order to sort of amount a collection of data that says, see, we're under threat, we're always under threat. Don't forget that. Don't forget all the pain we've gone through. Don't forget that everybody's out to harm us. We have to hold on to this thing in order to stay safe. Do not forget anything. So it's very much a part of keeping and holding on to this paralysis separation, it believes where to survive. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Thank you. You brought up pain body, and I want to share an experience I had when I was in Ohio. I was watching a Tupac movie that just came out, right, about his life. And at the end, Tupac gets murdered, and I grew up in that environment in the 90s with the gang and the violence and a lot of friends being murdered. It was like normal for every 2 weeks, a childhood friend being murdered on both sides of the neighborhoods, because you grow up in elementary, no one's in a gang. But then when you hit junior high, they're from this neighborhood, they're from this neighborhood. And I didn't know how to deal with that stuff at the time. And I want to be a part of, so I started doing that same stuff, monkey see, monkey do. I want to be a part of. Because I felt, I always say when people join gangs, they don't join to, well, at least for me and a lot of my friends that I knew, didn't join a gang to be a bad guy or a burglar or robbing people or a dope dealer. We joined a gang because we felt disconnected and we wanted to feel a part of, we wanted to feel love, compassion, camaraderie. Yeah, belonging, a sense of belonging, a sense of importance. Because somewhere along the line, I lost that. Like Peter Levine said, trauma is a loss of self, right? And I lost myself early on in my childhood. But as I'm watching this movie at the very end, I realized he wasn't the only one that died. I had so many friends that got murdered or doing life in prison, because of the ignorance we were trapped in our traumas. And we never once talked about our traumas. But what I'm trying to get at is after the movie, for almost 4 hours, I had tears flowing. I was crying a river. I wasn't sobbing. They were just coming down and I couldn't get rid of them. And I realized that was the pain body that was stuck in me. And I realized that we just didn't know any better. We didn't know any better, and that awareness like healed me. But it was 4 hours of that just pain body just flowing out of me, all that trapped energy and the trapped emotions. But I felt much lighter the next day. I'll tell you that much.
Healing. Well done. Yeah, I mean, tears, sweat, and urine. That's one of the ways, 3 of the ways that we detox, right? We can pee it out, we can exercise it out, and we can cry out the 3 detoxins. Sounds like you really launched yourself in another reality. A new shift came through. It's great.
Yeah, thank you.
Wow,
You talked about us against them. I know Eckhart Tolle really helped broaden my lens when I read New Earth, and he talked about the collective egos. Do you believe we can also create a collective ego like the individual ego that creates this us against them mentality that we're seeing out in the world today, whether it's the political parties or the religious beliefs, or just like even in the 12-step communities, if you don't fit the right label, we can't help you mentality, the us against them. And it's always separating ourselves. And for me, and part of my awakening is awakening to this, the oneness of life, really, and looking beyond those collectives and really looking at we're all one, like you said earlier, we're all one. And when you can see beyond that stuff and what's creating the suffering, man, it's a lot of compassion is in the heart. That's my experience.
Yeah, I think it's, we look beyond, but we also stop believing it. And I think that's a real root, is if we, to detach from it is to stop believing those stories. We got to see them and we go, oh, look at that. I think I need that political party to feel good about myself. That's what's going on. Okay, there, I'm going to do the work of not believe that that's actually true. And if I don't believe that's true, literally, it starts to loosen up, because it's our belief in the stories, in the wounds that keep them cemented within us. When we stop believing them, then there's nothing for them to stick to, and they start to dissolve. We start to dismantle those pain stories. But I think that at big group levels, which is just bigger tribes, right? Bigger tribes that have shared stories, shared wounds. And when we start to see at all levels, my one level, my family level, my city level, my country, my party level, my global level, that there are shared wounds, we can stop believing all of them. And that's when we really graduate from this.
How do we co-create a better reality?
Wow, that's a big one. So I think you and I are doing it in this conversation. And by having this conversation, we're recognizing the parts of a reality that you and I don't want to cling to or attach to, that we want to release together from our reality. So in that, we're engaging in a co-creation with each other. We could co-create with whatever you want to call source, which says, I want to move in greater alignment with you. And now I'm going to become a being that transmutes the story of connection versus a story of separation. So I co-create with a greater intelligence a reality of connection versus separation. But I think that the more we release pain, the more we bring in the energies and the humans that contain the energies that we need in order to engage in that co-creative exercise, because we're connected. Then we go, oh, you're doing the thing, I want you to do electroconscious, and we're doing it. Come on in, let's you and I create the higher frequency. Let's you and I create a reality in a space that's more in alignment with love versus in alignment with separation or fear.
Appreciate that. It's so hard. I always say the greatest the minority in today's world has nothing to do with skin color. It's authenticity. It's so hard to be authentic and yourself in a world that wants you to be something else.
I love that, and I'm going to reflect on that for the next week. What you just said, I think that's brilliant. Greatest minority is authenticity. I think that is a giant threat that many of us feel. We're trying to claw our way through, not only to find ourselves, but find a safe space to be ourselves.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Yeah, it's really hard. I was just talking to someone earlier, a friend of mine, and he's saying it's so hard for him to speak his truth without judgment. Or I always say the Jesus story is told every day. People are crucified for trying to just being themselves. If you're not caught up in the group think, people will crucify you in some kind of way.
Yeah, I think that it might be even a little bit of a test in some way on us going, well, that's your reality, and I got to walk away from it. And how do I stay in alignment with my authentic self? So, because if we believe they're projections of fear, then that means it's also within us. If we in any way resonate with their judgment, then it's also within us. We have a matching story.
Yeah.
So, right. So we got to go, oh, that really affected me, their judgment. That means that I still have fear within me, and I've got to work on my fear. So it's almost like revealing to us if it sticks to us and we still got it. Right. And so then it's something within us and has to shed versus ask the other people to get us and ask other people not to judge us. What we've got to do is release any of us that cares. We've got to release anything within us that thinks that that's actually real. And that's deep and hard work, but that's the work.
Yeah, I love how you said that, because that's that was the hardest thing I had, in the 12-step community, because some of the stuff that was written in 1939 was no longer my truth in 2024. Yet it's the group think's truth. So how do I express myself without being judged or condemned by certain people within that group think? And so that's been the hardest process for me. And there's been a time where I actually just left. But the reason why I come back is because it gives me an opportunity to help people, so I'm grateful. Some people believe that if you leave, you're going to die. They say that the 12-step community is like the mafia. You leave, you die. And that's a very limiting and dangerous belief to believe for me. So I don't believe in that. But that's been the hardest journey for me in the 12-step community, because I appreciate it. It taught me how to live on a spiritual basis. But to speak your own truth is blasphemous to some people in the rooms.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people I think very similar as who work in they oppressive corporations, for example, and they finally arrive at a place they're going, this is not in alignment with me. This doesn't reflect who I am. I got to get out. And yet everybody tells me I'm an idiot. I'm not going to make the same money. I'm not going to have the same prospects. I'm going to have a different one. So it's the same sort of shedding everybody else's projections, which we do when we share our own pain.
One thing I love that you talk about in your book is finding the ego in your thoughts. Could you give us an example of that, if you don't mind?
Yeah. So that's being gentle is a big one. So if I have a fear of being rejected, then what I'm going to do is my mind is going to try and keep me safe by criticizing them first. So if I feel that if I walk into a room and I feel somebody's rude, my thoughts are going to go to, what an asshole. Right? right? My thoughts are going to start to construct a reality that they're a bad guy, that there's something wrong with them, instead of allowing me to reveal and see the wound within me, which is that there's still a layer of fear of rejection, and that rejection is somehow intolerable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And one thing I've learned, and you talked about in your book, which I loved, is the fear of not being good enough. That's so deeply ingrained in me. That inner critic, that voice in the head, well, even the emotions stored in my body, you're not good enough. That's a powerful way to find the ego in your thoughts and your emotions. I mean, it's stored in me, it seems like, and it's really hard to get rid of for me. I've done a lot of work and I've reduced it, but it's still in me. Even going back to school, you're not good enough. You can't do it. That belief.
1,000%. I believe, and I'm working, I think, more and more at the group level, because I think we have individual manifestations of that shame story. I'm not good enough. The thought I'm not good enough. But we also carry it to the group level. So, which is, I think, we've been carrying it for that shame story for a long time. And so we can see where it's and feel where it's sitting at an individual level, but know that it is deep and it's been around for a long time. And so we can be really patient with ourselves as we are peeling off many, many, many layers of the I'm not good enough story. Many layers. And I tell my clients that often so that they can just sort of relax and not punish themselves when it's not gone after they've worked on it so hard for a week or even a year. Because we are so connected. And therefore, we are healing each other's collective wounding. And I think the most profound wounds is I'm not good enough. I think that runs far and wide. So to be really patient as we continue together to peel off that one, just like fear of abandonment, far and wide, like everybody's carrying that one. But the I'm not good enough, I think, is one of the deepest ones. I believe. I would hypothesize. I think it's one of the deepest.
Yeah, thank you. And abandonment issues. You talked about many layers of abandonment issues in your book, and I really appreciate it because, I didn't know how much that affected me until I did the 12 steps, and I realized how my father, when he left the family, I think Gabor Mate talks about how children are narcissists in the developmental sense because we don't know how to process things correctly. So one of the things that happened to me when my dad left, and my mother's trying to explain my dad left us, the first thing that came to my mind was I wasn't good enough. If I would have been a better son, a more loving son, my dad would have stayed with us. I took the blame because I just don't know how to process that stuff correctly and not communicate that stuff to my mother. And that affected me in so many different ways, different layers of abandonment issues.
Yeah, I think you communicated that perfectly. I think that's so common childhood experience of parental abandonment. Something wrong with me. It's my fault. And then we need to release that. I think we're at a time, though, that in releasing that childhood wound, we're also helping each other release it at a big collective level, right? We got more of the tools to keep diving in. So the more we can see, oh, yeah, I was abandoned as a child, the more we can keep going and pull that one out in its many layers.
Yeah, appreciate it. I think when I understand this stuff within myself, the more understanding, the more compassion I have. I love what Thich Nhat Hanh, the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh would say, understanding is love's other name. And when I could try to question and understand people's behaviors or their state of being, I can have compassion for them where I don't have to be so egoically reactive to them, like F you, et cetera, because I have understanding, and that's been the greatest tool is learning how to look at things from an entirely different angle that the 12 steps taught me, or as Wayne Dyer would say, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And that's powerful when you actually apply it.
Well said again. Absolutely. Especially when we understand people are not just being assholes, they're in pain.
Yeah.
We're all in pain. And pain doesn't behave very well. Pain is antisocial. Pain lashes out. Pain projects. Pain throws up on other people. And if we look at it that way, we can go, oh, well, you still believe your pain, but I don't have to believe your pain. I can protect myself from your pain, but I also don't have to believe it. And therefore, I can see who you are, that you're going through this storm of a reality just like me. It's not easy. And this is where you're at and trying to figure it out.
The problem with the golden rule is love thy neighbor as thyself is that most people don't love themselves anymore. We live in a system that teaches us that, and I look for the longest in my experience, like I only love people as much as I love myself. And I didn't love myself for the longest. And it's been this transformation of consciousness, this awakening has taught me so much.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Absolutely. I think if Maggie Bear said, love your neighbor 10 times better than you love yourself, figure out how to love yourself more. Don't hurt anybody until you're figuring out how to love yourself, right? So, yeah, absolutely.
I love that. Yeah, that makes sense. And my friend, I used to call her my spiritual auntie. Her name was Patty Ochoa, Patty O, and she would say a prayer. May others treat me tomorrow as I treated others today. And that's so powerful. If you actually apply that for at least 30 days, that will transform you. That will change you in some kind of way.
Yeah, I'm going to have to reflect on that one for a week too. Thank you.
Yeah. It really helps invite mindfulness, into your daily life if you actually say that prayer and apply it. And I think that's what spirituality is taking responsibility for your own thoughts and your own actions.
Bingo. I think that's exactly what it is. Yep. Oh, that's why it's been a big tension for me to arrive at the place to go, really, it's all about ownership. Your freedom is in owning all of it, owning all of your pain.
I always tell people in Alcoholics Anonymous, when I first went to Alcoholics Anonymous, my first language wasn't English or Spanish, it was Victimese. And I was a victim to everything,
1,000%. Who doesn't go to that place, right? And also launch their healing from that place.
Yeah, you're right. It's almost automatic that the ego turns into victimhood automatically when we experience like trauma or just in general. Like I always trip out on my mind, like when something happens that doesn't go right, I'm ready to, my attention is trying to blame someone. And when I can catch it, you go from being it to seeing it, it has no power.
1,000%. Yeah, exactly.
How do we go beyond the 3D reality? Like, what are some practices?
Well, I think there's, in the book I mentioned quite a few of things that have worked for me and in working with my clients. But number one is, for me, is silence, 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 silence. Ego is noisy. Pain is noisy. This reality is noisy, getting noisier all the time. And so to connect to the energies below ego, below the pain body, below the storm, we need to connect to the quiet. And truly, the quiet within us is the part of us that's connected to it all beyond, to the bigger us. Because I truly believe that this we're no bigger than a grain of sand. This personality and this vessel is like nothing. Pain chills me, it's big and important to me so much. It's nothing. So to get really quiet is to connect to really, and there's a lot more going on beyond this little tiny pain delusional reality that my mind ego thinks I'm in. And to get quiet is to connect to that energy. And that energy is huge. It's vast. It's full of potential. It's very deep. So we need to spend a lot more time in quiet in order to connect to it. And then there's other ways of connecting to quiet. Getting out into nature, exercising, moving with your body, breath work, throwing away electronics for big chunks of time. Lots of ways that we can keep building that quiet and that turning inward versus connecting outward.
I appreciate that because a lot of people may be listening and it's hard for people to get quiet. Being quiet can be scary for the ego.
It's not could be, it is. It is terrifying because that's the inward journey. And when you get quiet, what happens is you start to then get a view on what's going on in here versus being solely distracted by what's out there. you start to get a perspective from the centered place. You go, oh, what's going on over there? Actually, we start to see things. And if we start to see stuff in that quiet, that's when it starts to come into awareness and we start to heal. But even rather go, oh, it doesn't feel very good. Before we even recognize it doesn't feel very good, let's go over there and distract ourselves. Let's find something to do. Let's find something to do compulsively so we don't go in there and start to see what's really happening in our inner reality.
I appreciate that. I'm thinking about my own experience, and early on, I was so deeply attached, identified with these thoughts. They were like, I was addicted to these thoughts and emotions that it was hard for me to get quiet. But when I started to at least just practice meditation, I started to entertain myself with these thoughts flowing,
Beautiful.
and little by little, with having that awareness, I started to detach from them little by little and expand beyond it. And along with practicing the principles, these type of spiritual principles, they say when the mind is quiet, the soul will speak. But that took a lot of work, doing contrary actions, observing my daily life and taking responsibility, owning it, and little by little, I have no problem with getting quiet today. I have no problem with meditation. You do retreats, right? And meditation retreats?
Yeah, it's my favorite kind of work. I'm kind of in a big shift right now, so I had to slow it down, but that's where I want to do that group work and bring in some big medicines at the group level, including a lot of things, but including silence. But that's where I'm hoping to go over the next 15 to 20 years is more and more small group level. Group healing at the collective level, bringing in things like silence, nature, the healers of the planet, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, that's where I'm going to be going more and more. But I'm doing retreats for many years.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. You just made me think about plant medicine. I would love for you to touch on plant medicine and how that can be effective for us that have traumas and these trapped emotions stored in us.
Yep. There's so much, and so many people are talking more and more about plant medicines, including psilocybin, bufalvadias, Cambo, ayahuasca. They're coming more and more into focus, always for good, but it doesn't mean we're not seeing some behaviors that don't look so great and that they're also leading to some manifestations of some narcissistic behaviors that are coming out in the plant medicine community. So the medicines themselves, in the right context, I think are beautiful for bringing awareness to those buried stories, because the stories are so thick and so sticky that these medicines from Mother Earth can often assist us. And the way I look at it is like, it tells the mind, go look at that shiny thing while I get in there and start to scoop out and rearrange the furniture a bit. And we'll start to bring it to the surface when you are kind of distracted. And then we can start to ventilate. We can start to bring stuff that on regular state of consciousness feels too painful to go into. So we have some medicines that assist us in bringing them to the surface so that we can move them through. Now, I personally don't believe that these medicines do it all on their own for the most part, that there needs to be some really good integration. Otherwise, when you do plant medicines, often it's just about altering states. What we need to do is alter realities. So we take the learnings from the medicine and then we do the integrative work, which is how I like to do in retreats. Is how do we then move it through an altered state of, woo, it's all about love and life. And actually then to bring that into the body and literally release the wounds that have come into awareness. We now have to release them. We now have to move them through. We now have to transmute them so that our reality changes, not just that state. And I think that's a big piece of the missing puzzle in where people are working with plant medicines today. Integration.
I love talking about awareness as well, because, in the 12-step community, they talk about asking God to remove these things. But I always say you can pray to God 1,000 times, but without awareness, there is no change. It's all about awareness for me.
1,000%, which is light, right? Awareness is just light. It's consciousness. It's the energy of consciousness. Oh, I see you. Because the energy of God or source sees all. right? It knows all. And that's the direction we're trying to head to. Little mini step by mini step is to not hide anything from ourselves and to move towards seeing and therefore loving and accepting everything. And there's a lot hidden down there that we have not wanted to and not been able to see for a long, long time.
Yeah, thank you. What's the importance of forgiveness, if you don't mind asking?
I think forgiveness really would be the process of letting go, literally of a letting go, which is letting go of the attachment to the other person's projection of pain into my reality, right? Somebody else threw up their pain. I allowed it, whether knowingly or not knowingly, or it arrived there as a child and it's in my experience. If it's my job now to let go, give it back, that's yours, that's not mine. I can no longer let this be part of my reality. And so you let go of your attachment to their pain story as part of your reality. Now, sometimes we're ready for forgiveness. Sometimes forgiveness takes 20 years of that letting go to feel safe enough to get to that place. Everybody moves through their forgiveness in their own chunk to take lifetimes. You know what I mean? So it's a process. I don't think it's an instant arrival. Yeah, about 7 years to arrive at a place that went, oh, Mom, I get it. Totally out today. And to think about you doesn't send me into a rage or even a verb. Okay, but it's a kid in our process of bringing more awareness and more awareness. If it's safe for that to have happened. It's safe for that person to be who they are. It's safe for me to remember it. Now, my body was in need to protect myself by, recoiling or rearranging thought patterns in order to protect myself. So it's a process of arriving at safety around that event ever having happened. It's usually not easy, but it's a process and a good one and a worthwhile one.
I love that. Dispenza says, what does he say? It's in my files. He said, having memories without an emotional charge is wisdom. I call that an awakening, and it's pretty much what you said. And there's a quote that says, and it's in the 12-step community a lot, shared upon it. And it's like having anger towards someone else is like drinking poison, wishing for that other person to die. It only kills you. And when I was able to see that and how that creates a disconnection within me, and it keeps me in a lower vibration, and it's unhealthy for me, I was able to drop it like it's hot, like that Snoop Dogg song. I drop it like it's hot because it burns me holding on to it. So I was able to let go of it. And I think the Buddha said something similar, like holding on to anger is like grasping onto a hot coil with the intent to throw it at someone. It only burns you. When I truly seen that in me, how it affected me, I was able to release that stuff.
Beautiful.
Because I had that understanding. I think understanding is more powerful than forgiveness, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so. And I think there's a process to even understanding.
Yeah, you're right.
What it was about, why it happened, what its relationship to me. Does it mean I'm not good enough? Like letting go of that. So I think arriving at understanding can take time. And so we need to be gentle with ourselves as we walk towards understanding the whys and the wheres and detaching from it all. And so that's what really, because I think most people I work with want to forgive. That they punish themselves if they can't get to the forgiveness fast enough. Why can't I forgive? There's something wrong with me. And so to be gentle is another way, is the gradual process of forgiveness, and to not set any expectations of oneself, if any at all.
I appreciate that, and I love what you said right now, and I love when you said sometimes it takes several years, because it really does at times. It's hard. But I really appreciate that, because we don't have to be hard on ourselves. If I just question and try to have understanding, eventually I'll get there, and I don't need to forgive because I have that understanding and compassion later on. Like I used to hate my mother and father when I was a kid for certain things, and I remember saying, when I get older, I'm going to hurt my father. I was so upset with my mother and father for the longest, and they didn't know that, but I realized today that my parents did the best they could with the tools they had, and if they would have truly known better, they would have done better, or maybe I just didn't have communication skills to talk to them and have these proper, conversations that I needed to have. So with that understanding, it was able to release a lot of that tension. between me and my mother and father that they didn't know they
Nice
had.
work. It's nice work. It's beautiful.
Appreciate it. And how important is self-compassion for us as human beings?
Dude, compassion or self-compassion, they're the same thing. Compassion is the biggest extra silence thing. It's the biggest healer there is. And I think it's just a beautiful key to arriving at compassion is to practice and reflect on knowing everybody's doing as they can. And that we're all not just, flaming assholes, brushing along pain. And we behave like assholes. We have to on pain. We all behave like assholes. We all do. Don't think anybody's free of behaving like assholes. We all do. And if we understand that and we understand it comes from pain, we have lots more room for compassion. Now, what needs to accompany compassion is boundaries. You cannot have compassion without boundaries because if you don't have boundaries, you're not safe. You're not keeping yourself safe. See, boundaries takes responsibility for yourself. And the more I take responsibility for my own reality and how I feel and my own work and my results and my path, the more I take responsibility for what's in and what I'm responsible for kicking out, then the more space there is for me to have compassion for everybody. So I don't think you can have one without the other.
I love that. I always tell people in the AA community, I don't suffer from alcoholism anymore, but once in a while I suffer from assholism.
Who doesn't? We all do.
Yeah.
I apologized to my partner 3 times yesterday. I'm so sorry that came out. Oh, I'll go work on that. All the time. All the time.
And that's powerful, though, to take responsibility and be more aware and be accountable and responsible for our own actions, I don't have to be a trash compactor anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's beautiful. I think it's very powerful. And ego does not want us to see how powerful it is to go, oops, sorry, that's my shit. Let me clean that up. I did that. Here we go. There we go. Got it. Okay. Right? Like it does not want us to see how much power there is in owning when you throw up your pain out there and hold yourself accountable to it.
I love that. That's why I love the word ignorance, because it's an extension of the word ignore. And for the longest, I ignored my daily behaviors and the harm I've caused myself and others. And today, I don't do that anymore as much, very little. But it's been the difference maker for my life and my reality. So suppressed emotions. I suppressed a lot of my emotions for a long time. Do you believe that creates addiction, illness, and disease for people that don't do any inner work with themselves and hold those trapped, stuck energies within their body and mind?
Yes. Of course it does. I mean, if all pain is repressed emotion, and ego's goal is to not bring awareness to the repressed emotion, and the only alternative is to find ways of coping with it. And we cope with denial and avoidance and ignoring. And there are lots of ways of coping in this reality, which are addictions. I'll go focus so much on this thing that I don't have to feel this thing. Now, these things that we're avoiding, these are big. They're painful. They're horrific. They feel like they can, and they do often control all levels of our being. They're big. So I don't want to say that we're just wantonly denying, and that's an easy denial. This is really, really, this is a painful reality. And so we are avoiding big, heavy, sticky, deep traumas. And sometimes the only way we can stay alive is we've got to go to that thing to help us cope until we have enough resources around us that we can finally go in and see it. That repressed emotion is the thing in there that's driving us to go to distracting any way possible.
I asked you what it meant to be asleep. What does it mean to be awake in your opinion?
It is to exist, experience the reality beyond our pain stories, beyond the density of the third engine. It is to experience and be aware that which is truly not us, but is only repressed emotion, repressed bad feeling.
Love that. Thank you. For the longest, for a period of time, I had a false belief that being awake meant you don't suffer anymore, or you just don't do these certain behaviors or patterns anymore. They're all gone. But for me, that's not the story today for me. It's really just becoming more aware and learning how to suffer. And when you learn how to suffer, you suffer much less because you're practicing these principles. It's kind of like a stick shift, you learn how to change gears, not all at once at times, for me, but everything goes a lot smoother when I learn how to apply these gears and switch gears when needed. I suffer much less.
I love that. Yeah, I think what work many of us, not everybody, because I think so many of us have different journeys here, right?
Yeah.
We're here for different reasons and our paths are different. But for the people that are in my circle, some people will call it like your soul brood, that we're finding out more and more how many layers and the depths of the pain we're in, and the density, the sickness of this existence. To wake up is to really see our life. Like, it's just really a dark, thick, dense, contracted reality. And for many of us, therefore, it's quite the process to continue to shed, to release, to transform, to transmute, to dissolve the layers and layers and layers and layers of this. And some of us we've already been doing this for thousands of years, shedding the layers of this really real dense reality. So it's not all going to go. We're not getting out of suffering right away. But the more we understand that suffering actually doesn't exist, the closer we get to actually releasing those layers quickly, maybe, or freeing ourselves. But really, it's like layers and layers and layers until we get to the point where we go, oh, actually, that was real in the end. That's what we're trying to go to, right? That's what we're getting to. But there's so much within us that doesn't yet get that. And so that's what we're trying to free ourselves, is those stores within us that don't understand that none of this is actually real.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to ask you one last two-part question, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Do you believe in reincarnation? And what's the purpose of life?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, for the easy ones, will you? Okay. Reincarnation. So once again, I'm going to be humble. I do believe, but I think my guess is going to be one, it's more complex than I can possibly understand with my limited mind body. I think that most likely we come back and inhabit various bodies, and we take on the stories that we have volunteered to come in and manage within this physical body. So I'll come back lifetime after lifetime in order to heal the genealogy of that family. Yeah. And I can't go any further because I'm getting a big giant. Just don't bother going there. Like, you don't know. So I don't know, really. And the purpose of life and lives here is really just to be engaged in the creative process. And I really am moving towards believing that in this real dense reality, the creative potential is huge, right? There's so much material to work with. So every time we transform or transmute, really, right? We can go from, oh, this thing is really real to actually it's not. Every time we go from ow to, oh, my word, it's brilliance. That's we open a creative flow. And so I think we've really agreed to come to this reality and engage in life after life in order to participate in an individual and moving towards the collective creative process. It's just creation. Creation is moving from mud into creating fruit out of mud. Like, we're like, this concentrated goo, and then we go, oh my God, look at this juicy mass of beauty that nourishes us, right? And think that that's all that we're here to do, is to engage in a creative process. And the interpretation of the density, the fodder for that creativity, we interpret in here as pain. But really, it's just like concentrated massive potential. And our mind and ego goes, ow, 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 ow. Look at all these creative ways that we can be in pain. And now let's create something really extraordinary out of that.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate your humility. I don't know how to explain reincarnation, but I believe in it. It makes more sense to me. I started a 12-step meeting with some friends here in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I made it where we don't have to have just certain literature, where we can use outside literature, they call it, right? And I think I sent you the topic. I led a meeting, and you put a topic together, no more than a page, and I used different paragraphs. One of them was with the Gospel of Thomas, verse 3, the kingdom of heaven is within you. If you look out above, the birds will find it first. If you look in the water, the fish will find it first. But look, it tells you to go within, basically. And but one of the first paragraph I started off with was a paragraph in your book about being asleep, and your definition about being asleep. And I'll tell you right now, a lot of all the guys that everyone that was there loved your paragraph. A few of them bought your book because it's powerful. It has a lot of depth and weight, and I shared what it meant to me, each paragraph that I chose for my topic, and then I opened it up the meeting. But what that type of format does is help us expand beyond just the groupthink, and be more authentic and more expansive. So I really appreciate your writing. I appreciate your book, and I'm a huge fan of you. So thank you for coming on.
Oh, you honor me, and you validate the reason why I put that out there, and hopefully transmitting something through high soul purpose, which is one of my purposes. So I really am grateful for you sharing that. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. And how do we find you, your links, and connect with you, if you don't mind?
Yeah, the easiest way is my website, which is changing and being ignored constantly. So don't put too much stock in what it's lately. As I said, I'm going through a massive shift, so some things get prioritized. And the website is tribetocollective.com. And on there, you can find out about the book. You can get actually the first chapter for free. If they can download the PDF, and there's something in there floats your boat, then you can obviously go buy the book. And then future retreats, probably not till 2025, will be posted online. I'm not taking on new individual clients too much. Mostly I'm going to be doing group work in the future. But anything and everything will be through there.
Yeah, thank you. I would love to connect with you for a retreat in the future. So, yeah, that'd be awesome.
Love to do work with you. It would be just glorious.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm going to end it with something you wrote in your book, and I think it's a beautiful paragraph. I learned how to read when I had my awakening, so I really had lower level reading, so bear with me.
Oh, it's beautiful. Please share.
We are decompressing from the pain of existing in an ancient state of separation. There are denser 3D energies committed to fighting for survival on this planet that may not be ready to receive love you bring. They're not ready to see it, but know that every meditation and kind word, every practice of acceptance, forgiveness, or expression of gratitude feeds the deeper penetration of consciousness. And I really appreciate that. It's such a beautiful wording. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's beautiful to share. I'm very grateful.
Yeah, thank you. Namastizzle.
Namaste.
Just know we out here. Know we out here working in a major way. Had to speak on it just to make a play. Any given subject, know we make a way. Time to level up on the day-to-day. Know we out here working for the greater good. Expand your mind, broaden your lens the way you should. From the stars to the galaxy to speak on spirituality. Higher understanding for the neighborhood.